Welcome Natalie Samovich to the Q&A from Knowco Collabwith.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Yara. Always in creative, innovative spirits, even in COVID times.
Yeah. So who are you, Natalie, and what is your experience in the energy sector?
Who am I? I think that's an easier question to the outsiders than from the inside, but I will reflect on what I'm currently busy with. So I'm focusing on two angles. One is related to the distributed renewable energy, solar in particular. And organically out of that is the new business models related to distributed energy production, and as well as the digitalization. As we know, not everything is done and possible in the field, not only from the technology standpoint, but also from the acceptance, new models, and the policy. So I would say it requires the whole spectrum of the projects and initiatives and participations and the contributions in order to move it forward. So in principle, if I have to put the overall umbrella, I would put it marketplaces, working on the digital marketplaces for energy services and beyond. So within this capacity, I'm co-chairing working group at TIPSNet. It's European Strategic Energy Technology Platform, where we worked on, I think, a very interesting document that I would like to recommend everyone to have a look at, which is Vision 2050. This is how we envision energy in Europe on the wider scale. So have a look, I won't say much about that. And related to the digital side, I'm chairing working group on smart energy at the European Alliance of AIOTI Innovation.
Very good. Then what are the challenges in the energy sector, and as well from an SME perspective? And if we are looking for maybe, this student challenge they have at university, what will be the focus and the challenge for them, to bring these new and fresh ideas to the sector?
Excellent question, very close to my heart and to some of the energies that I dedicate to. Starting with what are the challenges? It's one of the reasons why we named our group of companies Resilient Group. Because you really have to have lots of resilience in order to, not only to address the global challenges and the European challenges that we have in energy sector related to the decarbonization and related to the also economic parameters on the competitiveness, energy security and other topics. So this is the answer as to the resilience. In terms of what it would take the companies, the small companies, the SMEs, the startups, the students to bring their ideas forward. Within my experience of mentoring building global innovators in Portugal, where the energy climate kick and other programs basically aggregate the startups and they put them through the very intensive period of 2 weeks. So I've been mentoring them for a number of years. So I've interacted and was able to distill a little bit on the deeper level as to what are the challenges. One is ability to scale up within the regulatory and the business environment that is undergoing transformation. And here we have a perfect storm because we have the transformation that is taking place within energy sector, within the promise of the ICT sector, including new connectivity, including new digital platforms and new solutions. And on the policy, we have the totally new paradigm of democratization of energy and decentralization of energy, and the integration of the new actors. So how to scale up in such an environment where it's not clear as to the evolving roles, it's not clear as to the full capacity of the actors, and where we have the incumbents and where we have the new solutions that could be offered. We're still dependent on the incumbents' acceptance, and there is not much clarity there either. So tough environment. So it is not the environment that is established and stable right now. It's really ongoing. In terms of, and then we have additional challenge, almost forgot about it, but not to be forgotten. It's related to data. Data policies, data spaces, marketplaces of data, and ability to tap into either additional services or the data sources. I would say between these two, I think some of the bigger challenges lie, because in terms of the funding, I think the investment is there, but investment is looking for scale. Investment is looking for stability, predictability, and I don't think this is the environment that can deliver that. So,
yeah, and I am thinking that's the very important, the word resilience, because when maybe a small startup is having a great idea for the ecosystem, the problem is like they have not the patience to adapt and to change and to make the evolution to go to the goal, like it's making, you know, to solve the challenge. Really, like it's not from one day to another day. It's not 3 months, 6 months, 2 years. Maybe it's a long run marathon to make it happen. And I think resilience is a very beautiful word to put in the, you know, into all this ecosystem of innovation.
You're absolutely right, Yara. That's an excellent point. It is not a quick win take all exercise, neither in Europe, no in the world. I think in one of the emails that I received yesterday, there was a description of the story of the delivery startup that started in 2014. And they had the 2.5 billion exit now from Uber, but it took 10 years. It took 10 years. It took lots of disbelief, and but this is one of the examples of the minimum duration of something. And here, of course, you know, using this example, it's interesting to observe the following fact, that the, you know, scale of the exit, of course, you know, I don't think we can name those numbers in Europe to the same extent. And I think that's a little bit of the question. It's not the first time that we're discussing it. You know, you were at the panel on AI, right?
Yes.
And so that's where it came up as well. It's the scale, you know, how do we scale up the solutions to the level that we don't have 27 little apps for parking in the member states, but how do we grow these? How do we merge, combine, and scale up so that we can have this digital champions, as being called, and the scale ups? I think that's a bit of a question thing.
Yeah, totally. And then, because we are talking about innovation, but what is innovation for you?
A very good question. Stepping into unknown, on both on the personal level as well as on the technology business model level, and digging deep, deep until you find the differentiator, until you find the real solution that can scale up, and then you can bring to reality one way or the other, because not all the companies have to have 2.5 billion exits, right? But innovation, I think, starts with the with this first desire of stepping into the unknown based on the set of the parameters that were internally identified, based on the experience, based on the studies, based on many things. And I don't think there is one pathway as to how to get there. So that's a little bit of the personal approach. Innovation on the corporate level, or the company's level, the interesting angle there is what is the reactive innovation and what is the organic innovation. And I think this challenge is, from what I observe, personal opinion, is going more towards the innovation happens outside on the smaller level, and then slowly sips into the more complex environments and being absorbed. And I think we're getting better at that, both sourcing innovation and as well as fostering it.
Yeah, and absorption, because if we are creating new things but nobody is using them, you know, as an industry, then we are not making the impact.
Exactly.
So for your perspective in innovation, are you witnessing in the field of renewable energy something you say, this is very innovative?
Absolutely. And too bad we don't have another hour to discuss that. If I have to, to put the general comment on this, innovation in energy is everywhere now. Because of this constellation of the policy, because of the technological advancements on the devices, on the connectivity, on the IoT platforms, and other levels. So we can do things faster, cheaper, more distributed, and instead of building everything top down, we can do the bottom up, we can do clustering, we can do additive models. So then you have the whole spectrum. You have the technology advancement, you have connectivity advancement, digital platforms, new business models, and I'm a great believer in the right policies. And I think it's the policies that it's the chapters related to the new actors in the clean energy for all, which we all started with a number of years ago, that kind of gave this boost to this innovation, or spurring the innovation in many fields.
Yeah, and I am hearing now from you, like, innovation is not only to have this bright idea and to transform them in a startup, but it's like to enable the innovation and the impact in the industry. And it's more about the structure, and as well about facilitating and having a more helicopter observation of what is happening and how we can, facilitate this innovation in the industry. Like, because it's a complex industry. You cannot change an industry with one idea. I mean, it's like we are all here bringing all together to make a common sense and in which direction we want to go. I think it's more in the orchestration. The innovation is happening now.
As well, when you already bubbled up a lot of solutions, right? And the innovation is also how to put these components together.
Yeah.
In something that is overall for the grid operators. I'm sure they are looking at all the innovative solutions and thinking, what we can plug in and how when they are ready. But there are lots of open questions, the maturity level, the security, the reliability. It's that is also innovation. It's not only the idea of creating just a solution, right? But also innovating how to bring it to the level of the requirements towards the industry that matches those requirements. So if we all recall the example of Cisco, how they started on campus trying to connect things together out of the use case of the need to connect the system. So this is organic growth, right? And then everyone realized they also need to connect the system. There is value to it. But then after that, it's all about standards. It's all about certification. It's all about the things that require very detailed focus, which is part of innovation, but not innovation itself. So the innovation is within the new models, could be within the new solutions, and of course there's lots going on the materials level, on the connectivity level. You know, we're at the dawn of 5G rollout. You were already looking at 6G, so it's definitely there. But there's much more than that.
Yeah, and this is the interesting part of we can say, like, I like you're bringing now the case of Cisco, like, as well the funding, and I think this is important. The funding now is oriented to ideas instead of bringing the ecosystem working all together. And then maybe we have to focus more now the funding on how we can bring all this collaboration and the ecosystem for innovation. And because funding is needed as well for this case.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right on this. Yes, I also have a feeling that it's very much ideal solution oriented, right? So you cannot name. So there is funding for the incubators or facilitators of the startup journeys. So those are in place. But I think in Europe that we are not as great on this ecosystem enablement as, for example, very recent examples related to the blockchain solutions. If you see how we organized ourselves in Europe versus how, you know, the big consortium organized themselves in the US, for example, for logistics, right? They put 20 partners together and they are working on things to bring things harmonized, interoperable, where there is a common platform. We have great examples in Europe, for example, P27 platform in the north, where the banks do not compete on the infrastructure, common infrastructure, but they compete on the services, right? That is an example of the ecosystem that got the funding for the infrastructures, right? But there are, so these are the two examples that I can mention. We have great initiatives of the observatories in Europe. They play their role as well. But if we're discussing funding for the ecosystems, it's only now that we're starting looking at it from that perspective. One of the examples is digital innovation hubs, right? We have digital innovation hubs within the member states, but only now we're putting the umbrella organization of the digital innovation hubs, which is the whole ecosystem, and potentially the funding for something like this. And I'm sure there are lots of examples, you know, much better than me, of the other ecosystems there. So we have the ones on the smart grids and things like that. But on the policy level, yes. But on this fusion of the solutions level, let's put it that way, we're not there yet.
So from SME perspective, so for the small companies, how they can, do you have best practices how they can innovate from your experience?
The best practices of the innovation process, you mean, or being part of the ecosystem, or scaling up?
I think being part of the ecosystem and how themselves they can innovate, which kind of...
What comes to my mind is following. So within the networks, such as, for example, AIOTI, right? We have a blend of the large companies and the SMEs and the startups. And so there is a lot of cross-pollination going on. And if you're part of the bigger group, you know, you at least you get the exposure, but not only, because the voice counts as one voice out of 180, right? And which is the equal in there. So one call for action is being part of various networks. I know it takes time. I know it requires the resource, and I do not recommend for the coders to fulfill those roles in this network. But my call for action that people related to strategy, business development, and other positions within the startups should be part of the European networks, whatever reference or whatever is relevance of those networks to them. And they should both not only be part, but influence, be part of the dialogues and participate. You know, one of the examples you know.
So myself, yeah.
I would love to reverse the role and ask you actually.
Well, now it's for you, Natalie. Now it's your turn. About, yeah, I think the energy small companies, they have to come and bring what they are doing, bring it the voice, and understand how at European level all the policies are working, and how the company can relate to these policies, and how they can bring this value as well for the policy discussion.
Exactly. Policy, standards, the advocacy groups. One example on the energy communities. So one of the areas that we're busy with is these specifically new models in distributed energy and so-called energy communities. So we're part of the network on the member state level, and helping and shaping, organize the task forces that can address the policymakers, that can address the technological requirements to the companies, etc., etc. But it is not a naturally occurring phenomena. It's a dedicated effort that has to be accomplished. It is not something that will be done for them. So my advice is not to be waiting for these changes and for the solutions to come and be facilitated by someone, but be part of these dialogues. Organizations participate, play an active role, and it's not always about funding. It's about being part of it and being active, proactive in solving the barriers, basically.
Yeah, because at the end, it's like innovation is when we are doing the transformation, and where the transformation is happening is not in local levels, in a room, in the office of a company. I think is going beyond this to make it happen, to make the change happen.
Exactly. And finding the like-minded thinkers, collaborative environments, complementary environments, and even within the competitive environments. I think the tasks and the challenges, especially challenges within the energy sector, are way too big for, if you look at the Green Deal and decarbonization goals, within the next 10 years, we have to accomplish something that it took us, same number, that took us 25 years before. So the 25 years condensed to 10.
Yeah, I think like going together in collaboration, we can go faster and further.
Yes, and we don't have any other choice. So that's the point. It's just a matter of my advice, get going now and make yourself heard on many levels, and the voice and the hearing by the policymakers, by the business ecosystems, by the bigger companies, is not a random thing. It has to be worked on as well. Yeah. So put the voice out.
Yeah, exactly. Speak up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Natalie, for this conversation and this Q&A. I think this is a huge inspiration for the industry sector, what you are doing.
Thank you so much, Yara. Always pleasure talking to you and hearing the ecosystem approach that you've been advocating for, an additive knowledge building approach. So it's not only the ecosystem for the organizational purposes, but it's the additive knowledge building and all these invisible things that not always translate into the direct numbers and the revenues, but are incredibly important for everyone. So keep going, all the best to Knowco, and keep facilitating things, I think, for all of us.